Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give you a couple of moments as you settle in. Welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar. I'm Marianne Monteleone, Vice President of Professional Development for LIBOR. We have a very special guest here with us today, so we'll let you settle in. We'll start on time, and I'll be sure to introduce him. This was worth waiting for. Speaker, gentleman, and talent through the National Association of Realtors on a title called A Realtor's Roadmap to Financial Independence. And Rich has a very, Arzaga, did I say that right?
Arzaga, yes, exactly.
Okay, he has a very extensive background on the subject, so I will be reading his introduction formally. I'll let you settle in. And again, welcome to LIBOR's Wednesday webinar for our members. So, A Realtor's Roadmap to Financial Wellness, and our speaker today, our presenter today is Rich Arzaga. Let me read a little bit about Rich. Rich Arzaga has a skill set that is ideal for our financial wellness community. He is one of the few financial planners who can advise on and integrate directly held real estate investments into a wealth building plan that is exactly why he became an advisor. Rich is a certified financial planner, an accredited investment fiduciary, a former realtor, and the founder and CEO of Cornerstone Wealth Management. He is also a longtime adjunct professor in the UC Berkeley Personal Financial Planning Program. Rich is often quoted in financial and business publications and has earned numerous awards for his work as an educator and financial planner. We welcome you, and we're glad to have you with us.
Marianne, thank you. Thanks for the nice introduction. And thanks for the invite to speak to your membership. I appreciate that. And I also wanted to thank the National Association of Realtors and the Center for Financial Wellness and Brittany Schenk for connecting us as well. I look forward to presenting today. So if you think about what your work is about, let's go back here for a moment. You see lots of buyers and sellers, you're very busy. You're going with the ebbs and flows of the marketplace. Right now it happens to be pretty positive, but sometimes it's not as strong. But in the very end, the reason why most realtors, most of you are doing what you do is because you'd like to get to a point of, I guess it would be critical mass, where you have enough capital, you have enough savings to be able to live off the savings, the income from that for the balance of your life. So no matter how old you are, if you are 35 years old or 55 years old, there's probably some endpoint in mind that you have. And so this is intended to help you understand things that you should think about as you get, as you work toward that goal. Because it's a goal out there, whether it's your first goal or second goal or down the road, it's something that everyone eventually gets to. They get to a point where they want to go ahead and declare financial independence. So this is what this presentation is about. Okay, first thing is that this is education. So I would suggest that if there's some ideas that you like here or that you'd like to explore, please talk with your local advisor, your tax person, your attorney, something like that. If there's something you're really stuck on, I'm really happy to take a query, an email or a call and maybe be a traffic cop and get you in the right direction. So feel free to reach out to me as well if there's something that you'd like to think about and you're wondering how to do that. Here is our agenda for today. And so I will say that it starts out with a little bit on the journey or the roadmap that you have in front of you as a realtor professional. And then there's three areas that I want to touch on that will probably be of most help to most of you right now. And then I want to introduce you to some resources for you that are specifically designed for you in your profession. So it's very, very nice to be able to have something customized to your business. And then I definitely want to take questions. In fact, I'll stop a couple of times throughout the presentation and take questions along the way. So feel free to go ahead and add those questions. Marianne will actually go ahead and look through them and get me a couple of them to address, and then we'll take the balance of those at the very end. Okay. So once again, the Realtors wrote a financial roadmap, and I would say this: why is this different than any other retirement presentation you see on TV or that you might hear about locally? Well, the difference is that many of your buyers and sellers, they they don't know exactly what your maybe your personal financial life is like because it's very different than theirs. Many of your buyers and sellers are employees or maybe they're business owners. Um, they have predictable income, right? So they can expect a paycheck, especially with employees, at least twice, maybe twice a month. They have benefits. So they have several benefits. They have medical benefits. They have retirement plan benefits to some extent, and even some still have pensions. So they're fully benefited and taken care of, and they're as long as they continue doing a good job and politics in the company they're working at are fine. Uh, it's pretty stable existence. For you, when you walk in the office every day, it's it's brand new. It's starting from scratch. I mean, you might have a pipeline of things, but the fact is that once that pipeline is up, you have to go out and do something more to continue to feed that pipeline. So it is a quite a different journey. There are no guaranteed income unless maybe you're in management in this business. Um, there's generally no health care that's paid for. You generally pay for that on your own. There's no 401k matching. In fact, there's probably not a retirement plan unless you set it up on your own. So it's a very different experience here. And just to go a little bit more in that, typical, and these are the more for you to see, and I already know that you live this, but steady income. This is a typical non-realtor finance financial household. Employment benefits, employee protections. This is really big. I mean, there's lots of things that happen in life. As an employee, you generally have some sort of small life insurance policy that's paid for, and you can add a few more bucks and pay for a larger benefit. If you get sick, there's generally sick leave. That's nice. If you are disabled, sometimes there's a group disability insurance policy that takes care of that. So there's lots of nice protections that you have. Um, and then there's retirement plans and matching. Okay. And then there's a very simple W-2 tax filing for many people that are non-realtor households. For realtor households, it's variable income. So right now things are going well for many of you, and that's good, but it doesn't always stay that way. You're self-employed. You have business owner risk, which is an entirely different risk. You don't have that when you're an employee, but you have business owner risk. And then there's no retirement plans. And then finally, you're doing a more complex tax return. So you can see there's quite a difference in the two households here. Um, I put together, actually for your benefit, a list, a checklist of 32 financial issues you want to consider before you wind down your career as a real estate professional. So the nice thing is that as an attendee for at this program here, you're going to be able to get one of these checklists for free. Here's the first page. There's a second page with another 16, and I understand that Marianne and Libor will be posting this there on the website. I think it's a COVID website there, and maybe she can give more information on that at the very end. So that's yours, and it really is a nice starting point. But the thing is today, oops, let me go back here a bit. We're not going to be able to talk on all 32. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of these, and then I'm going to leave the checklist for you to kind of cover the balance of them. And if you look at this and you're able to go ahead and go through this and you have good answers for most of them, you're well on your way. My experience with the checklist like this is that most people have very few boxes, are able to check very few boxes confidently. So I hope this is a helpful tool for you. Here's another terrific tool, by the way. And really the reason I'm here able to present to you today, the National Association of Realtors several years back, probably about 3 years ago, if I remember correctly, launched a Center for financial wellness for real estate professionals. They recognize the need. They recognize the same thing I just talked about earlier, the need to support the community because it's fragmented out there. I mean, after all the great training, technical training, and all of the resources that you have out there, both nationally and also locally, it really kind of stops when it comes to personal finance. So they put together this terrific financial wellness center for you. And I've been working with them on presenting a few topics over the last 9 months. Just terrific people. And I've got to tell you, I'm really impressed because I don't see very many other industries, that actually support the financial well-being of their membership. So I give it 4 stars. I only give 3 stars, so 4 stars is really, really good. So I'd like you to check that out. It's right inside the National Association of Realtors website. So you're automatically eligible to access it. Okay, so what should you know, assuming that we're targeting the same thing for a moment, that we all eventually want to go ahead and retire successfully. So, and for some early retirement might be 65, for others it might be 50. Basically what my experience is that the younger the person, the earlier the year is. So if I were to talk to somebody in their late 30s, they would say, yeah, I'd like to be done by age 50. And then it kind of creeps up where when you're 47 years old and you say, I think I'd like to be done when I'm 55 and maybe 60 years old. That's kind of how that works. But no matter what that age is for you, here's some things you should know. And this is probably the biggest question that I get. And after this section, by the way, we'll stop for questions. So please feel free to get them to the chat, and we'll cover some of them. But the question is how much do I need? Or the better question is, do I have enough, or will I have enough for retirement when I decide to go ahead and stop what I'm doing now? Excuse me. I think the first thing is the word retirement. A little bit tricky. Most people actually don't want to retire, but what they would like to do is they would like to make work optional. So what that means is that they want to go ahead and be in a position to say, you know what, I don't think I want to do that work anymore. I think I want to do something different. Gardening, outdoors, charity, children, you name it. Do something different. And I still want to be active, whether it be part-time work or definitely scale down, or volunteer work. They still want to be active. So the word retirement is a little tricky. So we're going to call it financial independence now. So financial independence, the solving your gap, the question on do I have enough? It really is a matter of understanding the difference between what you're spending and what your income sources are. And that's what you have to solve. So I'm in Denver right now, traveling and doing some business along the way. And I met with a longtime friend of mine. And people are very different. We have clients that have a few $100,000. We have clients that have a lot of money. He happens to have a lot of money, or relatively speaking. And he was curious because he's a friend of mine. He's not a client. He was saying, well, I'm thinking $15 million is really what I need. And I said, how did you get to that dollar amount? And I could tell that when he says that, he's probably south of there, but not too far south. It's probably in the 10 or 12. We're friends, so we haven't really, talked about this too much, really. But so he just has in his mind that that's enough for him. Somebody that might have a couple $100,000 might feel that $1 million might be enough. But there is a real good answer out there for that question. And it really depends on your spending. So essentially, the more you spend, the more you need to be able to fund that spending going forward. So here's what the steps are, and then I'm going to show you because I don't want to make this too hard in terms of math. But this first step is to calculate the income gap that you will have when you stop work full time. Right. So what is that gap that you're going to have, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the second step is to calculate your estimated retirement savings needs to cover that gap. So I want to make it simple that way. Now I want to also tell you that there's more nuances to it. Like for example, what if you have somebody in the family that requires a large amount of capital, or you want to help them buy their first house? Or what if somebody, you and your spouse or significant other, has a long-term care need? So there's things to think about, and you can still plan for those too, by the way. But this is a baseline to help you understand what it takes to get there. So how do you calculate your income gap? You know, so the way you do that is you understand three different things, and you actually probably have access to these. Um, One is you understand what your household spending is. We call that a need. So let's say for a moment, to make it easy, that your total household spending, and I mean everything. I mean things like when you buy a car every 5 or 10 years, gas for that car, clothes, furnishings, uh, gosh, food, going out, dining, vacations, charity, that sort of thing, car maintenance. Let's say that the taxes, by the way, medical, that's a lot of stuff right there. Most people miss some of these categories. But let's say that your need total, just to make it simple, is $100,000 a year. So, okay, that's at least you know that. And the question I get normally is, well, how do I find out? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do it. One is the hard way to do it, which I think is actually maybe the best way to do it. And that's to go through your last couple of years of credit card and checking account statements, because from those, all your credit cards and your checking accounts, that's where all the money flows. Money comes in and money goes out. So the combination of those two reports, and you can draw those down line anymore on a spreadsheet and sort it out, will give you an idea of what you spend. And you have to take out the outliers. Like, for example, you're spending college, it's only going to last for 2 more years. So you need to normalize it a bit. And a certified financial planner can help you with this stuff as well, by the way. I think this through. But so once you get all of your expenses, that would understood, that would be good. Some people don't want to go through that much work. So the other shorthand way to do it is this. So, well, how much did we earn last year as a household? Oh, we earned 125,000 per month. How much did we save last year generally? Well, we saved about 2,000 a month, 24,000 a year. So if I earned 125,000 and I saved $24,000, it really means I spent $101,000. So that's the other way to do it. That's shorthand. I like the first way to do it, but in the absence of anything right now, I would do whatever is going to be best for you to get close to that answer. So it was a long explanation for how to find that out, but that's a common question I get. To say that our need is $100,000 for right now. And let's assume for a moment that it's Social Security, and this might be on the lower average side, by the way, but with a couple, spousal Social Security benefits, even that that spouse did not work, they still get half of the earning spouse's benefits. That's a great thing about America here. Let's say that income is about $45,000. So I've got a $100,000 need. I've got $45,000 of income coming in from an entitlement of Social Security. So what that means is that my gap is simply $55,000. So far, I hope the math is pretty straightforward. That's how I figure out what the gap is. That's the number one in the last page. So now the heavy lifting on the math, and I promise you, if you follow these slides, assuming your numbers are correct, by the way, that you will find this to be fairly easy. So now I want to calculate to get that $55,000 income gap. What is it that you need to have saved so that all the, for the most part, you will not run out of money for the balance of your life. And it assumes that it's a straight life. There's no risks involved. There's no long-term care. And what does that look like? Because that's kind of the baseline where people want to understand. Well, remember, we're going to use this as an estimate because yours will actually change in the markets. And how you invest and how you behave in markets will cause this to change as well. So we'll call this an estimate now, but we take that same income gap. And remember, it was $55,000. Okay. And what we do is we divide it by 4%. So we assume that whatever capital you have, that if you draw 4% of it for the balance of your life, and not more, any more than that, that you'll probably end up with at least $1 at the end of your life. Now, the 4%, they call that the 4% rule. I use that because it's recognizable and it's easy to calculate. The reality is that based on your your own situation. It could actually be 3 or 3.5%. 3 might be a little bit conservative. 4 might be a little bit on the more aggressive side. But I would, for right now, I would divide it by 4. In fact, you can do one at 3.5 and one at 4. So divide it by 4%. And then what that means, if I take my gap, divide it by 4%, I come out to $1.375 million. So I have my answer. If I have $100,000 of needs growing at inflation 3% every year, and Social Security gives me $45,000 of income a year, growing at about 2% a year or so. So my gap is $55,000 a year. If I take my $55,000 divided by 4%, I came up with what I should have saved during that time. So this will get you on the board in terms of answering that question. This is as complicated in terms of this presentation as it gets. So I want to thank you for hanging in there with me, but I want to tell you that this is a way you can find it on your own for right now, where you're at in the scheme of things. All right. So I think that we'll take this example, the pre-retiree should consider having 1.375 million in total savings to help fund the annual gap. All right. So Marianne, let's take a pause right now. We're about a third of the way through. I'd like to take any questions that there are any.
I don't see any questions, but I did have a comment if we'll get into 401k for independent contractors.
Yeah, yes, we will. We'll talk about that a little bit. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would say this in advance. There's more than the 401k out there for independent contractors. Very exciting, actually.
Okay.
So I do want to spend a few minutes on that later on.
Okay, great.
Okay, so on we go. Okay, so here's another one of the 32 things you should know before you retire. And this is interesting because probably before I just brought the slide up, you probably wouldn't have thought this was a top one. But imagine yourself for a moment in your 50s and getting into your early 60s. And really what occupies your mind when you're that age, because all of you will get there, by the way, but what occupies your mind is, how does healthcare work? I mean, right now, whatever plan you're on, and chances are you're on a board plan, or they have a medical plan, either national or at the Long Island board, but you're on a program. And the thing is, what if I stop work, and what happens with this program? And by the way, if you have a spouse that's an employee, same question they might have is, boy, maybe I should work a little bit more because Medicare doesn't kick in until 65. What that means is that you're eligible for Medicare at 65. And that's a healthcare plan kind of already made for everyone 65 and older, right? So, but what happens before then? And then the other question is, well, when I get to 65, then how does that work? And then you hear all the news about how expensive healthcare is, and it really is very expensive, by the way. But so it's not just fake news. But so people get very concerned. One of the concerns they have, and what they act on this concern is, how does medical care insurance work, healthcare insurance, and what should I know? And rather than kind of asking ahead and getting some help, the assumption is that I should work until I'm 65. Well, the fact is that today in this country, healthcare is available to you through a variety of different means, by the way, when you stop working. But I got to tell you, one of the most predictable things I find in planning for clients for financial independence is healthcare. But it's one of the top anxieties that people have. The reason that it is predictable is because at 65, when you qualify for Medicare, it's actually a very civilized experience. You want to apply before 65. You don't want to apply late because otherwise it'd be more expensive for you. By the way, just heads up on that. So don't let it bypass you. If you're working, you can put it off. That's you have permission to do that. But if you are not working and you put it off, it actually will creep up on you. But other than that nuance, once you're engaged in it, we find, just to give you an idea, in today's world, that's going to change based on how much income somebody's drawing, because the more income somebody is making at 65 and older, the more it'll cost them, because there's going to be less, there's going to be less benefit or coverage from offset from the government. But generally, we assume present value, somebody who's 65 years old for the Medicare, it costs them $5,700 a year. So, and that's per person. And by the way, that includes all of the necessary supplements. Now, it could be 58, it could be 56, but normally when we get an actual statement, we see that it's about $5,700 a year for somebody 65. If you think about that cost for a moment, and think about what you're currently paying, especially if you're getting, because Medicare coverage is actually very, very good. And your costs on healthcare visits and doctor visits are well managed. So there's not much risk beyond that, unless of course you don't pay for it and you don't have that care. So I want to tell you, when you get to Medicare age, and I'm not there yet, by the way, I'm actually, that's the only thing I'm looking forward to getting older, is to get to Medicare. But I know for sure through my clients that that really works out very well. Some of you are already there, and can see that it's very stable. So I want to assure you that that it is there, but so don't unnecessarily let the existing healthcare insurance limit your options in terms of what you think or feel about what your healthcare is going to look like in the future, because chances are it's just a matter of becoming more educated on that. And that's something that a financial person could help, a financial advisor or planner, help you with. So on your journey for healthcare, find a good healthcare broker and work closely with them. So there are lots of healthcare brokers out there that are happy to answer your question, but there are other ones that are very proactive and that ask you questions and dial into what your needs are, and then they help navigate you. I want to tell you that there's nothing wrong with working with a broker out there. The fact is that insurance costs, insurance premiums are regulated by the state, every state. And it's illegal for insurance to cost less or more than it is for with one person or another, or even online. So when you think about, for example, buying life insurance online, and you say, well, I think I'll go ahead and cut out the middleman and buy it directly and save money. The fact is that it's illegal to actually sell it for less money. It's the same cost no matter where you go. So you might as well get the benefit of professional help in terms of healthcare insurance. Okay, so it shouldn't be feared. Healthcare should not be feared in retirement. And then healthcare insurance does not cover, so here's one thing, it does not cover extended care. And what extended care really is, it's another word for long-term care. And long-term care is another word or phrase for that somebody is not medically sick, so they don't need medical care, not covered by the insurance, but they do need assistance in bathing, clothing, feeding, taking medications, that sort of thing, getting around the house, going out and shopping. They do need some help with what they call activities of daily living. And that's a whole nother topic, by the way. It's a real important one, actually. So healthcare insurance does not cover that. You will need some other strategy for that. So notice I said strategy for that, and not necessarily insurance. Because not all plans need to result in buying more insurance. Sometimes there's other ways to offset that. Okay, so that's my healthcare speak for today. And then the last thing on this area, and then I'm going to go into retirement plans after a little bit of a break to take a question or two, which is heavy, is addressing loose ends here. So here's a very big loose end that I see, and that's estate planning. So it was kind of easy to get away with not being too worried about this over the last 8 years or so, 4 years, because the exemptions for estate planning, meaning what you have to get taxed on before it goes on to the next generation or your beneficiaries, is very high. I mean, it was $23 billion. And most households don't have that amount of wealth, and So it was not really a struggle. But estate planning now is going to change. Well, it depends on who wins this discussion here, but it could go down to as low as 3.5 million per person, which is still a lot, or it could go down a lot lower. But the big thing about estate planning is this: in the olden days, today, um, when parents passed away and they left stocks and bonds in the house for their kids, for example, those stocks and bonds in that house would be stepped up in basis, and there'd be no tax on that. The current administration, and I don't have a judgment on this. I'm just stating what they're outlining for what their plan is. Would actually tax on those gains now. So no longer would assets be stepped up. Now there's nothing we can do about that except to plan for that, and you can plan for that. I will tell you, estate planning, out of every household out there, uh, only 50% of them have done any sort of estate planning. All right. And then of those 50% that have done estate planning, uh, half of those are outdated. They're old forms. They don't have HIPAA, disclosures or language in there. If you took them to the doctor would say, you know what, this is not current. I can take this. They have an old ex-spouse as a beneficiary. That's always a fun one. So there's a lot of things that are broken in about half of the estate plan that has been done. So that means that out of every household out there, only 25% of them have a current estate plan. So that is such a big gap in what a very important part of personal finance is that to make sure that if you live too long or if you're alive but you can't make any decisions on your own financially or medically, um, or when you die that you want your assets to go to a certain place properly and very cost efficiently, that needs to handle time. So that is a very big loosening that I see often. And my experience is it doesn't matter how much wealth you have, the percentage of people that are unprepared or about the same, that they have $100,000, that they have $1 million or $10 million. It's amazing. It's just something that's very easy to put off. So don't put it off. And that's part of the checklist of 32 things to think about before retirement. Okay, long-term care planning. We talked about this a bit, about not being able to take care of yourself, although you don't qualify for medical insurance. That's what this is about. A couple more things on this. First thing is that studies show that when somebody hits age 65, that in the balance of their life, there's a 47% chance of them needing some type of long-term care that will require some expense. So that's a big number. And the only other number bigger than that at that age is there's a 100% chance of dying at some point in your age. So that's a 100% chance. Long-term care, there's a 47% chance each. So that means if you have a married couple, then 47 plus 47 is 94%. So there's virtually 100% certainty that that family will spend some money on some long-term care. The problem is this, is that when you get there and you need the care, you don't know how long it'll last. No idea. It could be 6 months or a year and a half. That would be nice, actually. Or it could be for a long time. You could have a dementia or Alzheimer's, and it could be for 7, 10, 15 years. And in the case of Alzheimer's or dementia, those are lifetime conditions. You don't get better from those. And you need help around the clock. You're not able to take care of yourself anymore. So that is expensive. To give you a sense of what the cost would be, the range of cost, home health care, if you needed to, 4 hours, 5 hours a day, 30 days a week, that sort of thing. All the way to assisted living, where you go into a facility and you're kind of independent, but you need some help with some things, all the way to skilled nursing. Skilled nursing is when you are entirely dependent on medical staff and hardware, infrastructure, machines that that do different things to help your existence. The range on a monthly basis on that is anywhere between $4,000 to $7,000 to $11,000. So, as an example, my mother-in-law, we're about to move her back into a independent care assisted living facility. She's in good shape, but in her case, we're in the West Coast. The cost for her care is for her room and board would probably be about $8,000, $9,000 a month. And it's not a fancy place, it's not a big room, by the way. So I got to tell you, in the number of years, we don't know how many years she'll be there. We don't know because that's really up to her. So it's really important to think about long-term care when you're, especially when you're in your 50s. That's really kind of the time to look at it seriously, because at that point, after your 50s, I think it's much more expensive to deal with. And remember, insurance is not the only way to deal with it, but there's other ways that you can draw down assets, you can move to another country. I mean, these are all things that people actually talk about. Okay, that's a lot about long-term care, a long discussion on that. Autos and homeowners insurance. Well, this is really close to home for you, given that you often drive your car and you have people in your car, and or maybe not recently, but soon again, and homeowners insurance. So what we found is that over the last several years, many people were underinsured when their homes had trouble with floods, flood insurance, or fires, and a lot of the things that we see with people in distress whose houses burned down was not that they didn't have insurance, but they didn't have enough insurance. And the battles with the insurance carriers were about, hey, this is what you paid for it, here's what you're getting. And they say, this is not enough. It's because they bought that insurance a dozen years ago. And the cost of wood and everything else has grown dramatically. So you want to have these are loose ends, you want to have your homeowners insurance and auto insurance looked at. Don't go after costs, go after value on that. And I'm happy to pay a little bit more money for a lot more value. So that's why I see it. And many clients that I work with kind of share that sentiment as well. And then finally, personal liability insurance. They also call this the umbrella policy. It's kind of more, it covers a broader range of things that maybe your homeowner's auto insurance doesn't cover. So look into a personal liability insurance policy. They go in $1 million increments. So the lowest level you can get is $1 million, and the next one is 2 million and 3 million and so on. And the more you've got going on for you, you've got a nice net worth and you've got a couple of properties and so on, you consider higher coverage for them. And again, your certified financial planner or a tax person can help you think through these types of issues. Okay, so let's see. If you go to the Center for Financial Wellness, okay, and then you click on the tile here, retirement planning, you'll actually see, and there's right there, you'll actually see this come up here. I captured this about 3 weeks ago or so, but in this center here, you will find, there's a website, by the way, the address to get there directly, but you'll find 6 retirement planning tiles on there. And you also find 6 planning and tax planning recorded webinars on there that are there for you to access. And these webinars are substantial. They are about, an hour a piece or so, and they're very useful. So I hope that helps. That's another resource for you. Okay, Marianne, before we round through and head home here, any questions at this point that we should tackle?
We do, Rich. We have a question. At what age would you start to accumulate that amount, and what age would that retirement be?
Got it. So I think that if I'm thinking back to the example about solving the gap, I think that's where the question is coming from. That assumes for a moment that is a present value of that picture, right? So I guess what I would say is that if let's say you're 45 years old and you want to do this calculation for yourself, you should do it based on the present value spending and present value what you would get on Social Security, which, by the way, it'll come for you if you get a statement. of your earnings, and it'll give you your benefits right there. That's how you find that out. Or you might have a pension as well. You get that calculation. You get that current value, what that would look like today. And then I think the best thing to do at this point is, because you're only 45 and maybe you're not going to retire for another 10 years, you would inflate that by about 3% a year, those numbers. That's how you would get there. How it really works, is that you sit down with a financial planner, and they actually will take your current age and they'll do all that stuff for you, and they'll give you a lot more precision around answering that question. But to answer the question here, you would do it at your present age, your present value, and then you'd say, well, I'm 45, I think I'm going to retire at 60, and you would multiply it by inflation, which I would use 3% to just be safe for 15 years, and that's how you would get there. So everything would inflate during that time. I think the assumption would be that as you continue working, you're earning more for Social Security, so that'll inflate over time, and certainly your expenses will inflate over time as well, and then that your earnings will inflate over time. But the trick is that ideally your earnings or your savings will inflate at twice the rate, hopefully, for most of you, as your expenses. So I know I took a simple idea and maybe made it more complicated, but you do need a little bit more heavy lifting on that. But I just want to get you on the board with how that would work. So I hope that answers that question. Marion, anything else you'd like to tackle before we move on?
We're good. We can move on.
Okay. So we are in the last leg here, and somebody had asked about retirement plans. And by the way, I love talking about retirement plans. Do that all day long. But I wanted to give you a cheat sheet here. This is as of 2021, so this is very current. Retirement contribution limits here. So I want to just show you a couple of things. I know this chart is there's a lot of numbers here. Maybe it's hard to read depending on your device, but it gives you an idea of the last 3 years of different retirement contribution ideas that might apply for you. And I want to go to a couple of them right now. Okay, so there's one. If you look at 2021, which is really the second column, and if you look about halfway down, you see elected deferral limits, which is really like the 401k plans that was asked about earlier. If you're under, and this is not detail, this is meant to be simple, so the detail is lacking here, but to give you some depth on this, that $19,500 is the cap for 401k contributions for independent contractors if you're under 50 years. If you're over 50 years, you get to the next one down, which is called elected deferral catch-up, because there's a catch-up amount. You're able to put in more money because you're older and they want to help you be successful in retirement. So you're allowed to put in $26,000 a year for that. Basically another $6,500 more than if you're under 50 years old. So that gives you an idea what that looks like. Okay, let me give you another number here. That's an easy one. Go to this second row. This is our first row. This is IRA contribution limits. It's $6,000 if you're under 50, or $7,000 if you're over 50 and over. So that's another number. Go to the third line there. Simple IRAs account. Simple IRAs, SEP IRAs, 401k IRAs, and IRAs. All of those four. And I know I'm talking through them now, but I got them listed here too, so that it helps. But a simple IRA is a very low cost, simple, that's the term, way to create a retirement plan. And you can have it invested in the same things that a 401k would be invested in. And that limit is $13,500 if you're under 50, and it's $16,500 if you're 50 and over. So we've already covered some of these here, but you can see there's a wide range of options here. And then the last one I wanted to point out to you, in the middle there, you'll see something that says annual compensation cap. And you'll see 401, and a bunch of the numbers, 404, $290,000. And I got to tell you, this is not a typo. I have clients of mine that are independent contractors like you that put in over $200,000 a year in their retirement account. So I guess when you think about the question, what can I put in to my retirement account? Um, I guess a couple of answers to that. One is, what do you want to put in? I think that's really the first thing to answer, because for some folks, it's like, well, I'd be lucky to put in, if I could put in 10,000, I'd be really happy with that because the cash flow is always tight. Other folks say, well, I put in 15,000 or 19,000, they mostly the maximum, but I'd like to put in more. So you ask, well, I know you put in 19,500, but what would you like to put in? Well, shoot, I'd like to put in $50,000 a year. Great, we can do that. Independent contractors, if you structure your business, your retirement plan correctly, you can put in much more than the 19,500 or the $26,000 a year. In fact, without too much effort, if you're an independent contractor, and let's assume you don't have employees or your staff is part-time, you can put in easily $50,000 a year without much effort. And it depends on your age. If you're 40 and over, probably put in about 125,000 a year or so or more. If you're 50 and over, you can put in a couple $100,000 a year. I've got a client who is 60 years old, and they are going to put in, because of the way these plans work, cash balance plans and kind of advanced retirement plan like that. They're going to be able to put in this year, $380,000 in a retirement plan that eventually rolls out into an IRA account. It's just like having a 401k plan. It's just more advanced planning. So I think for all of the things that we talked about earlier that were differences with you and people that were payroll employees, this is one of the biggest opportunities for realtors, is to overfund, legally overfund. These are not loopholes. You can see that here. Legally overfund their retirement accounts. And then you had a significant other, a spouse, something like that, and they're part of the business too. It gets even better. It can almost double depending on how it's structured. So I want to tell you why this is important, by the way. So now that we've got through some of the numbers here, and what the number that works is going to be unique to your situation here. But I'm going to run through this fairly quickly here. I showed this about a couple months ago. I showed an example of saving money today and what it does over time. And where I got some pushback on was, gosh, Rich, you're using a very aggressive return rate on this, because my experience is that the markets produce 3% or 4%, something low. And so you couldn't get some people past that. So this time around, I'm showing you first. Here's a history of returns in the stock market from 1926. So that's before the Depression, to 2019. And that includes like the big recession of 2008, the dot-com bust of 2000, 2002. So we've got all these markets in there. All right, Black Friday, you name it. They're all in here all the way up to 2018. So now take a look at those pie charts there. You see a column that says balanced. Balanced, basically what that means is that's 50% stocks and 50% bonds. So we're not shooting for the moon, right? But we're also not very conservative either. If you look at balance, you look at the average annual return rate during that time, for all that time, what is it? Is it 90 years? 90 something years? It's 7.83%. So I wanted to, and then if you look at that 7.83%, if you look across, conservative is almost 6%, aggressive is a little bit over 9%. So I want to use 7% for right now with you as an assumption, right? And this is where I'm getting this from. So it's not out there. It's definitely possible. And I would say going forward, it may be different in the short term, but in the long term, things always kind of balance themselves out. So we're going to assume a 7% return rate right now for this next example here. What happens if we're able to save another $1,000 a month? I'm sorry, a year. If we're saving another $1,000 a year for from a certain age into retirement. So let's say that I'm a 50-year-old, and the retirement age for that 50-year-old is 65. So what that means is they've got 15 years left. And let's say that their investment profile is 7%. So there's my 7% there that I'm borrowing from the previous page. The value of $1,000 saved per year, just $1,000 bucks. So If I can put more money into a retirement account, I can save $1,000 in taxes. If I do that, it's $25,000 in value for that, just by saving that $1,000. So if I look at this, here's a calculation of this. I wanted to show you this too, so you can see where I got that $25,000. I won't go into all these numbers here, but just know that I'm just showing you the results, how the 25,000 was calculated. So 50-year-olds, all you have to do is save another $1,000 a year invested in a balanced portfolio, roughly. We can't guarantee this because it depends on how you behave and depends on the markets, but 7% a year, and you'll end up with $25,000 more for financial independence. So the ratio is $1,000 today, this year, will equal $25,000 at retirement. Now here's where it gets, and that's a big ratio, by the way. Here's where it gets interesting. You're 30 years old, and so you've got, you're retiring 65, you got 35 years. We're basically using the same 7%. So check this out. The 35 years allows you to save, every $1,000 allows you to save $138,000 more at age 65. So there's the math on this. And the ratio is 1,000 equals $138,000 in the future. So saving more in your retirement accounts means more wealth for you when you retire. And the last thing here, by the way, because I know we're running, we have about 8 more minutes left, but your business is real estate. And I want to tell you, there's, when I talk to folks about real estate, it gets confusing, but I want to maybe clarify this for you so that when you talk about real estate again as an investment vehicle, you can maybe parcel it out a bit and make it more helpful to you. There's closely held real estate investment properties. There's real estate investment trusts, and there's owner-user buildings. These are 3 different ways to invest in real estate. The first one, closely held properties. That's like buying a duplex or fourplex or a single-family home or an apartment complex. Closely held properties. My experience, and by the way, I've been teaching the real estate investments class for about 16 years now. My experience is that people have 1 or 2 goals, but they can't reach both of them at the same time. One goal is appreciation. They want the asset to grow and they want to appreciate it over time. The other goal is cash flow, okay, where they want the income to come in and be able to cover expenses, right, or be able to spend it. My experience is this: real estate can do very well at one of the 2, but it's hard to do both. So, for example, if you're in retirement and you're looking to invest in real estate, I would suggest that you look at cash flow properties because that's what you really want from that property. When it appreciates only, but it doesn't produce cash flow for you, you really can't live off the benefits of that property. But if it cash flows for you and you have the benefits of the tax advantage of the write-off of the interest and also the cost recovery, the appreciation, it's a really valuable retirement tool. So think of closely held real estate in terms of 2 ways to invest in. Then there's real estate trusts where you give your money over to a professional management team. They buy a bucket of real estate properties for you, the commercial properties, and they invest for a return. That can be a growth thing, or that can be a income thing as well. And there's also another way that I think there's a great opportunity for some of you who might own your own building is the owner-user route. It's a really, especially with SBA loans and things like that, very good way to invest in real estate. I just wanted to touch on that there. Here's a real estate investment tile for the Center for Financial Wellness. When you hit that tile, when you press it, you don't have to hit it, by the way. There's a bunch of tiles that come up about real estate investing, so it's very nice that way. We'll have 11 tiles, and there'll be 4 recorded webinars on the topic. So another good resource for you. There's my contact information. Okay, I know I'm running, I'm on time, but I want to take some more questions. So I think we have another 5 minutes left, Marianne. Anything I can help your membership with?
We have a question. Is purchasing an investment property for the purpose of creating an income flow during retirement a good idea, even during a seller's market?
Yes, it can be. So here's the key. It doesn't matter if it's a buyer or seller's market or the market is up or down for anyone. It could be 2008 all over again. The question is if it's going to be used for retirement for income, as long as when you purchase that property, the cash flow model or the cash flow expectations that you have for it work, then it makes total sense. Because it's one person, it's the investor or the retiree purchasing that property and then doing the evaluation on the cash flow. So the chances are that because they're not going to be living off the equity, the market value, they're going to be living off of the income. And the income is based on the tenants, and the tenants are based on the local employment base. And there's a very good chance that with the markets up or down, the employment base doesn't change that much. Rents will change and go up and down, but in the long run, they'll go up. So yes, the answer is you can still make a good or decent real estate investment, even with the buyer or seller's market. It doesn't matter because you're one-to-one with that property, right? You're not you against the marketplace. You're you against that one property. I hope that answers that question. That's a really good question, by the way.
It is. I think it did.
Yeah.
Looks like that's all we have. It was.
Well, I think I put everyone to sleep then.
No, that means it was complete and thorough. It was great. It was lots of good information, and we will take the recording. Thank you for being so gracious to allow us to record. We'll take the recording and we'll put it on our COVID hub, which is lirealtor.com/COVID. And we'll put the handout there and the recording. And we thank you so much for being with us today.
Marianne, thank you for the opportunity, and for your members, check out the Center for Financial Wellness. It's a great resource.
Yes, we're getting thank yous in the comments, and very organized. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Good luck, everyone.